Spy, second half of the book. The blazing cannons kept up their deadly attack, back and forth across Brandywine Creek till midday. Then came the command to charge, and the air became thick with the crack of muskets, the hiss of lead balls, and the acrid stench of gunpowder smoke. But Maddie Rose could not hear this part of the battle from where she sat in Rose's upholstery shop, ripping out seam after seam, unable to concentrate on the required 16 stitches per inch. Maddie Rose, those seams can wait, said Mistress Ross kindly. She was a mild mannered Quaker woman whose husband had fallen too. The tide's water just docked from the Carolinas. Run down to the harbor and fetch my order of cotton batting and bindings. Yes, ma'am, answered Maddie Rose eagerly. She needed to survey the harbor, for Jonathan would come soon after dark. Maddie Rose's sharp eyes swept over the many ships crowded along the wharf. She memorized their positions and which would be petticoats, which would be stockings with toes up or toes down. But on this day, she was startled to see that many stockings would need cobblestone weights. Quickly, she fetched Mistress Ross's order, but before she left, something made her look across the Delaware toward New Jersey, and her heart nearly stopped. For there, in the middle of the river, hiding among the many more ships, sat a British man of war. Jonathan must know this, she gasped. Maddie Rose raced back and set to work. It was the heaviest clothesline she'd ever hung. But that night, Jonathan didn't come. Yet Maddie Rose kept watch for him long into the black night. He didn't come the next night either, or the next, nor the one after that. More and more nights passed, yet she kept looking for him from her window, never losing hope. Then one night, a shadowy figure stood in Jonathan's place. She snuffed out the candle and peeked over the darkened sill. Who was he? Could it be Jonathan? But when he saw her window go dark, he turned to leave. Maddie Rose didn't even stop to think or slip on her shoes. She bounded after him, darting in and out of the shadows between the lampposts, stalking him like a silent cat in her stocking feet through the damp streets. Jonathan? She whispered hopefully, shyly touching his cloak. Is that you? The stranger turned and smiled. I'm Seth, he answered, and by the looks of your feet, you must be little Miss Scarlet Stockings, Jonathan's sister. You know him? You know my brother? She choked. Her face flushed hot and her throat tightened as she waited for Seth's answer. But Seth was silent. Damp night air drifted in from the Delaware River, brushed against Maddie Rose's burning cheeks, and seeped into Seth's eyes as he stared hard into the darkness. Then solemnly he bowed his head and spoke in a low voice. I'm proud to say I did, miss. Slowly, Seth handed her a bundle. With trembling hands, she reached out, and for a few moments they held the bundle together. Then Seth spoke softly. I know your clothesline cold, miss, he said. I've come to take Jonathan's place. Maddie Rose nodded slowly as tears spilled from her eyes. She tried to hold up her chin as her father would have, but it dropped as her bottom lip began to quiver. Will not fail, miss, Seth vowed. I promise you that. Then he was gone. Back in her darkened room, Maddie Rose slowly untied the bundle. It was Jonathan's blue coat. Tenderly, she let her small fingers explore the blue wool serge until she found it a stiff, dried blood stain. Then, with her littlest finger, she lightly traced two letters on the pewter buttons. U.S. Us, she whispered in the dark. For us, dear brother. For all of us. That night, and for many nights to follow, Maddie Rose sat in her tiny room lit by a single candle, threaded her needle, and sewed. She was making an American flag from her scarlet stockings, her white petticoats, and her brother's blue coat. And sewn into every one of her stitches was a tear of grief and the clenched fist of defiance. Through the bleak, cold winter that followed, Washington's army retreated to Valley Forge while the British occupied Philadelphia, lock, stock, and barrel. At night, the redcoat invaders celebrated with military balls and fancy cotillions, and during the day, they patrolled the streets, eyes forward, never noticing a young girl's unmentionables hanging overhead on a small clothesline from a third floor window. In the spring of 1778, the British left Philadelphia, crossed the Delaware, and were sent running by Washington's army at the Battle of Monmouth in New Jersey. The patriots of Philadelphia celebrated, flying flags everywhere. But there was one little flag that hung by itself on a small clothesline high over Apple Tree Alley, and fresh spring breezes traveled from New Jersey and found the little flag and lifted it up high. How proud and strong it flew, just like her father's chin, for it was Maddie Rose's Scarlet Stockings flag. Many years have passed since the spring of 1778. No one knows for sure what happened to this little flag. But if by chance you found it in an old trunk or dusty attic or barn loft or musty museum's basement, you will notice that one star is bigger than the rest. It sits in a place of honor at the top of an arch of 13 stars in a field of blue, the Keystone Star for Pennsylvania. And if you looked under the star, you would find a musket ball hole.